Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this very important report. Mr. Speaker, diplomacy, by definition, is the art, science, and other means states use to interact with other nations to safeguard their national interest. Mr. Speaker, that being the case, in the modern day diplomacy, Mr. Speaker, was born out of the Vienna Convention of 1961, which also provided the basis for diplomatic engagement as to promote, to project, and to protect the interests of that particular country. Mr. Speaker, I'm aware that it was during your time as the Minister for Foreign Affairs, and later on when Amina took over, that for the first time we have adopted a written foreign policy which provides 5 pillars as the basis for our diplomatic engagement. Mr. Speaker, number 1 is peace diplomacy. 2 is economic diplomacy. 3 is diaspora diplomacy. 4 is environmental diplomacy. And 5 is cultural diplomacy. Mr. Speaker, these being the basis of our foreign diplomatic pillars, then what is it that an individual is supposed to have? This particular field is a specialized field. Mr. Speaker, I know individuals have alluded to this. When you are appointed, the first thing is you are expected to be the interface between Kenya and the country that you have been assigned to represent Kenya. There are basic things that, other than the educational qualifications, there are basic things that sometimes we fail to appreciate. Mr. Speaker, in the past, before the collapse, before the end of the Soviet Union, Mr. Speaker, diplomats used to be appointed purely on ideological persuasions. But today things have changed. Things have changed because first thing in our engagement is economic diplomacy. Mr. Speaker, as much as these 3 individuals are qualified, and I do know their first objective will be to pursue track 1 diplomacy, meaning state-to-state relations. But there are other things that they are also expected to do through track 2 diplomacy, which is non-state actors' role in our diplomatic engagement, in particular the UN. The Honorable Ababu Namwamba, as a former minister, as a former parliamentarian, I must say is one of the most qualified individuals to represent Kenya, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, being appointed or being assigned to represent Kenya at the UN habitat, Mr. Speaker, this entity is the only one of its kind south of Sahara. But the role has been completely dispersed. The functions of this entity called UNEP that is supposed to be here has been dispersed to Spain, Portugal, and other countries. Mr. Speaker, recently, some few months ago, Kenya was given the status of being the only non-NATO allied member south of Sahara, and the 4th in Africa, Mr. Speaker. This is not a mean achievement. Mr. Speaker, this comes with pride and prestige. And therefore, the individuals who are appointed to this position, first of all, must be educationally qualified, must be individually spirited and ready to represent Kenya in all aspects, in all their international assignments. And therefore, the question is, Mr. Speaker, and this is why I agree with the chairman of Defense and Foreign Relations, before individuals are assigned or nominated to these positions, there must be some engagement so that the presidential appointments are very lucrative and very appointment, so that individuals don't turn down these offers at the last minute. And therefore, in future, and I agree with the chairman, before some of these individuals are nominated or assigned, they must have some informal interaction. And this is what the chairman actually has alluded to, Mr. Speaker. And this is the right thing to do, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know you are a product of this. Mr. Speaker, this being the case, these appointments are coming at a time when the global village, when Kenya is being challenged economically, politically. There are so many issues that these diplomats have to be prepared. And I want to agree with what Honorable Sunkuli has said. Linguistic reference, preparedness is very important. When you are assigned, you are an intelligence officer. You are an economic representative. You are political. Therefore, knowing the language of that community where you are expected to serve is a very important thing. And therefore, I want to ask the chairman defense and the other member, in future, there must be some linguistic preparedness for some of these individuals. So that if you are posted to a Portuguese-speaking country, you must have the basics. If you are going to be posted to China, you must also have the basics. Otherwise, you will waste your first 2 years in getting ready, and that will be a waste. And by then, the times have changed. Your tour of duty has almost come to an end, and you will have done nothing. And I think that's a very important suggestion. not that we are not happy with the appointing authority, but it's a way to assist so that the individual becomes productive as soon as you take that particular role. Mr. Speaker, this being the case, today the world is going through a serious crisis. The Middle East crisis, the Ukraine and the Russian crisis, Mr. Speaker, and the change of regime in the US, Mr. Speaker, this is the high time that Kenyans who are appointed to these positions must be individuals who can meet the test of time, individuals who are prepared, individuals who have the skills, individuals who have the interests of this country at heart, and individuals who are willing to go out of their way to promote this premier nation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the past, you are aware, some of these postings used to be a dumping ground. You fail in all other things. And Mr. Speaker, I want to attest to one thing, that parliamentarians or politicians remain the best all-round ambassadors this country has ever had. And you are witness, you know it. Because the fact that you are a politician doesn't mean, and I want to agree, I want to disagree with those who say some of these individuals, like Ababu, Namwamba, and many others, who have been politicians, and I can tell you, will remain the best ambassadors this country has ever had. So let's support our colleagues. To be a former politician is not a curse. To be a former minister is not a curse. But you must be prepared for the job. That's why consultation is also very important. And Mr. Speaker, I know you are also a seasoned product of this particular ministry. One of the things that we should be encouraging, Mr. Speaker, is because we have opened so many missions. Are these missions contributing to the economic well-being of the Republic of Kenya, or they have just expanded our political engagement? As chairman and colleagues, as the former chair of this committee, is one of the things that you need to go around and find out what is the economic contribution of some of these missions that we have opened. If it is through political persuasion, I think you need to close them as soon as possible. If they are adding well-being, if they are going to add value to the economic growth, to the economic well-being, then we need to open, we need to look everywhere, east, west, north, south, and that's our diplomatic engagement. And that's one of the things that proudly we have entrenched over the years. And finally, Mr. Speaker, this appointment comes at a time also when some of the role, there's a lot of debate in Mr. Speaker. The debate is, what is going to be the position of Kenya? Are we going to join the League of Developing Nations, or are we going to be competing with ourselves? Over the years, we have been competing with ourselves. Today, Mr. Speaker, you are witness. Just reflect on the GDP of Ethiopia. It's almost twice that of Kenya. Few years ago, Ethiopia was a struggling economy. Mr. Speaker, look at Uganda. Few years ago, Uganda was dependent on Kenya. Today, they are not our favorite trading partner. Look at Tanzania. What happens to Kenya? We have all become, we have all reduced ourselves to an inward-looking nation. An internal debate that will not put food, water, and other amenities on the table. We need to think outside. What happens outside? We need to create opportunities, because many youths in the field are either unemployed or underemployed. And many are in the field and they're looking upon this leadership here to give them opportunities. These opportunities will not come if we become a state that politics from morning to evening, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with this, I want to urge my colleagues to support this, and I also want to urge the President to appoint more politicians to these very important diplomatic engagements. I support this appointment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The 1 hour is over. Mover.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Thank you very much, honorable colleagues, for your contribution. They're very enriching. If you noticed, Honorable Speaker, I did not interrupt most of the comments from honorable members, because it makes our committee even more better, enriching us with thoughts that we will reflect with the product that we'll be bringing to the House even in future. And I want to thank my committee, able committee, for their contribution. It was on recess when we did this, and Honorable Speaker, we had an almost 99% presence of members. I want to appreciate our committee, parliamentary staff, the entire secretariat that worked with us for this report. Honorable Speaker, without much ado, I beg to reply. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members on their feet, take your seats. Take your seats, Wamurada. Honorable members, I now put the question at order number 10, which is that, taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations in its report on the vetting of the nominees for appointment as ambassador permanent representative and consul general, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 16th January 2025, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 132(2)(e) of the Constitution, Section 22 of the Foreign Services Act, Cap 185(e), and Sections 3 and 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act, Cap 7F, this House approves the appointment of the following persons as indicated: Dr. Andrew Karanja, Ambassador, Brasilia, Brazil; Honorable Ababu Namwamba, EGH, Permanent Representative of Kenya to the United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP, United Nations Office at Nairobi, UNON; and Mr. Nur Yaro Gabo, CBS, as Consul General, Port-au-Prince, Haiti. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.